Welcome to the show, Deputy Leader of the Holos Party in Ukraine, Sovsun. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate some time.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
You are, as we speak, in the western part of Ukraine. I saw, I think, some commentary from you when you were in Kiev. How long have you been out of Kiev for?
3 days, I think. I left over the weekend. So I was leaving as the Ukrainian army was regaining control of Bucha.
Yeah.
So that is the time I left. I was thinking of probably I should stay, but I did promise my son to come visit him. So I tried to, in this uncertain times, I try to keep promises to my son. So I still came.
As a Ukrainian, can you explain to me what it's like? I'm thinking about, I did have a question written down here to ask you about, partners, fathers, husbands, sons, brothers, the men who have been told you must stay in Ukraine. How does it feel being a mother, having a son who, if called upon, will need to go and fight in these circumstances?
Well, my son is 9, and this is one of the things that I wanted to point out is that, yes, my son is small, but what I don't want this war to end with is some sort of compromise, which will lead us to yet another war in 5, 6, 10 years, because I don't want my son to inherit this war. That is for sure. And I was talking to my boyfriend, and he has his kids, and he said the same. And we had this, and my boyfriend is fighting in the army right now. So for him, that is particularly, important to make this statement. He's saying, I don't want my sons, he has 2 sons, to inherit this war. So this is how being a mother influences you. Of course, you worry so badly for your children, but even more, you want to ensure that they have the future where they don't have to worry every single day that Russia will attack yet again, and they will have to go to war. So that is how it affects my thinking. Like, I don't want my son to have this war in his future life.
But so your son is young, 9, so he was away from you in Kiev for his safety, and you have gone to meet up with him now. That's what we're saying. Okay, I got you. Was your partner your boy? Sorry, you go.
His father took him to the Western Ukraine the very first day of war. That was the deal we had before the war, because there was much intelligence gathered that the war might start. So I talked to my ex-husband, the father of our son, and we made a deal that he will be the one relocated our son. Given I'm a member of parliament, I had to stay. Typically, mothers would take children away, but in our situation, that was different. Sure. So he took him here to the Western Ukraine. Yeah, and this is the second time I can visit him for a couple of days.
Very good. So I'm interested how Parliament, how members of Parliament are operating right now. Is there an active government going on? Are MPs, are parliamentary members of Parliament meeting, or are you all separated and individualized because of the war?
We are actually functioning, and that is something that I couldn't imagine to be working, but it actually is. So we do gather for emergency sessions. They're different compared to what they used to be before. So before, those were lengthy sessions where we would debate on different pieces of legislation and, state political positions and so on and so forth. Right now, that is being done differently. So what is happening is we do have preliminary and informal negotiations about different pieces of legislation that need to be passed. But then we just gather just to, to press the buttons and to adopt the pieces of legislation that we have previously agreed upon. And that has been done mainly for security reasons, so that we all do not stay for too long in one single building.
Gotcha.
And location of the building is, of course, known. So, and Kyiv is under constant air raid alerts. So for safety reasons, we do not gather for too long. We do not announce the sessions taking place in advance. We are only allowed to publish any information about the session to like 2-3 hours after it was over. So it has changed in a way that how it is conducted. But the very idea of passing legislation is still there. And I think those parliamentary sessions were particularly important for another reason as well, is that showing to the people and to the world that we are still here, we are not leaving, we are governing, the country is functioning, and we keep on fighting. And I will tell you this, after every single parliamentary session, we all are getting like hundreds of messages from people all over Ukraine, but also from the world, saying that we are so amazed that you are still here. Thank you for showing that you are still here, that you are fighting. That gives us strength to keep on fighting ourselves. So this political function of showing that we are standing is also important, probably even more important than actually passing certain pieces of legislation.
Yeah, right. Is the Ukrainian government speaking with one voice at the moment? I mean, ultimately in politics, we have people on the left and people on the right, and people who have disagreements on how to do things. Are there any disagreements at the moment, or is everyone united in the approach that Ukraine is taking towards what's happening?
I will tell you this: we are completely united on issues that have to do with resistance towards Russian aggression. Like literally, it's a single voice policy, not because it was imposed by anyone. It actually started the first 2 weeks of the war. It was extremely not disorganized, but decentralized, where different members of parliament from different political parties would be speaking to particularly international media. And we
Mhm.
were actually saying the same things, but
Right.
not because someone told us to say that, but just because the situation was so obvious that you didn't need someone to tell you what to say. It just because the situation is black and white. You understand what is happening, and you just translate into the world what is happening here. Later on, there started some mechanism for coordinating between different members of parliament. But so we do have like I'm mostly involved in international work right now, like talking to the media, talking to other MPs, talking to the diplomats, and we do have a chat of different MPs from all political parties. Well, apart from probably the pro-Russian political group, where we actually coordinate and we keep in touch and so on and so forth. There are members of parliament who are more focused on issues like providing humanitarian aid. So those MPs are coordinating about themselves again through the party lines. So party lines don't matter that much in terms of resistance to the war. Of course, there are some issues that we disagree upon because we do came here with different ideas of how to govern. But those mainly have to do with local economic issues and how to respond to the economic challenges that are, of course, huge right now. Where we do try to come up with the solutions that everyone would agree upon. So I would say that about 90% of legislation that is being passed is passed unanimously. And that is something I've never seen before.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what I hear you saying is the big issue at the moment, obviously the war, you speaking as one in one voice, no matter where you are on the political spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, we have to, and also it's again black and white situation. Like there is nothing that you can come up with of saying about Bucha except for explaining that those are the war crimes, and we want the world to react. Like nobody has to tell me that this is what I have to be saying just because this
Yeah.
is how we all feel.
Yeah. Speaking of the world, now I know you were speaking to other New Zealand media in the last day or so, and the conversation came up about javelins. Now, for people who don't know, javelins are basically a anti-tank
And yeah.
missile that you can hold on your shoulder. So, like kind of like what I would think a bazooka would be, but anti-tank missiles. And our government has come back saying, well, actually, they've come back saying there's no official request being made, but I don't think there was our government wasn't receptive. It wouldn't seem to sending you javelins in the initial stages. That's what we're hearing. What does the world need to know to help Ukraine at the moment? What do you need to tell the world? If you had a forum to the world right now, what do you need to say to the world?
Well, I want the world to understand that this threat that we are all dealing with, this war, is not just a war between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine and Russia have a very long, complicated history where Russia has been trying to kill Ukrainians, to destroy us as a nation for centuries before. So that is part of the reasons why they attacked us. But there was yet another reason why they attacked us, and that is us choosing to be part of the Western civilization.
Yeah,
There were actually some people, like including the head of the Russian church, who said that this war is right and that it's right to kill Ukrainians because, and I quote, they don't want to see gay parades in Ukraine.
right.
That is what they're fighting against. They're fighting against something that we all, I believe, everyone listening to this, myself, believe to be normal in the 21st century. But they're fighting against that because they are, a Nazi state, and they're fighting against anything that they disagree with. So I want you to realize that this is again based on very complicated history of relations between Ukraine and Russia, but it's also because Russia is so much against everything that we all hold dear in our hearts, all the values, all the support to democracy and all of that. Ukraine is not perfect in that. We do have our own issues. After all, I'm representing an opposition political party, and I can tell you a lot about the problems with Ukrainian democracy. But we still elect our parliament. We still elect our the presidents. We are still, in that sense, a functioning democracy, and that is what Russia is fighting against. And that is why we are asking the whole world to help us, because if they win here, and I don't believe they will, but they will definitely try to. But you have to realize that they're a threat to the whole Western civilization. And that is why we're asking for weapons, because that is the only way to stop them right now. And the weapons we need are not just anti-tank missiles. We got that. We are using them very well, but also anti-aircraft, fighter jets, long-range missiles to destroy Russian artillery, which I hate particularly, because it was with artillery that they were destroying the city of Mariupol, and the artillery that they're using to destroy my native city of Kharkiv right now. We don't have weapons to destroy Russian artillery, and we need that one. So that is what we're asking the world to help us with. And again, we are doing that because this is a threat not just to us, but also to the whole world. And we're asking you to help us fight it on our soil.
Another way that hindsight being 2020, if you had been a member of NATO, that possibly would have been a helping hand now, because the NATO alliance would have been attack on one as an attack on all. What's the best way to explain to those of us who aren't in the know about why Ukraine is not part of NATO? And will this be the straw that, as soon as it's over with, Ukraine will be straight into NATO and joining the alliance of the NATO countries?
Well, this is a tough question, because you have to realize that joining NATO depends on the wishes of both sides. First of all, Ukraine needs to want to join. Second, NATO needs to accept Ukraine as a member. And I would say that there were issues on both sides.
Right.
So for a while, Ukraine was going back and forth in terms of we are more with Europe or we are more with Russia. The last pro-Russian president we had, we kicked him out after the popular revolution in 2013, 2014. After that, all two presidents that we had, they were all saying that European and Euro-Atlantic integration is our choice. It is part of Ukraine's constitution right now. Yeah. So we stated directly in the constitution a couple of years ago that we want to join NATO. That is official, as official as you can get. But there were different approaches among people towards a NATO issue. But I will tell you this, since the beginning of the wars, the support of joining NATO has been as high as it has never been. It's in the 70s right now, from 68 to 75. That is, again, very high for Ukraine. And but the other issue is, of course, NATO states whether they are willing to take Ukraine in. Because we were very close to getting into NATO in 2008. But then I believe because of Russian pressure, the NATO states refused to take us in. And that is one of the issues that now there are huge debates about Angela Merkel's role in that, because she was one of those people who were opposing that. And there is right now lots of criticism of that history, how she's trying to say that she's trying to fight against Russians right now, but she was one of the major forces why we didn't join NATO in 2008, which of course would have saved lives here. Russia wouldn't go into war with Ukraine if we were NATO members. After 2014, the situation got much more complicated, because we as a society became much more pro-NATO. But then Russia started war in Donbass, killing 14,000 people in 8 years of war, and annexing Crimea. And then NATO started saying we don't want to take in a country which is in ongoing military conflict. So this is the issue that NATO is referring to right now. Of course, there are additional issues like whether the Ukrainian army meets the NATO standards and all. I think we're done with that. I think the whole world believes that Ukrainian army is actually one of the strongest in the world right now. So I believe this issue whether we fit in militarily is not an issue right now. But there is an issue on the NATO side saying that if we take you in right now, you are at war. That would automatically mean that we are going into war with Russia.
Right, gotcha.
So that is the discussion right now. What I wish to be the best solution for this is this: we win this war, and we apply to NATO once again. We talk to the NATO leaders, and we ask to take us in. And that would be the final solution. And that is something that Russia is very much afraid of, because if you are following the talks, one of the biggest issues that they demand is Ukraine announcing its neutrality. And neutrality means that we are non-allied state, so we are not joining NATO. And I'm getting these questions from many European countries, particularly like from Austria, Finland, and Sweden, which are officially neutral, which are now reconsidering that, by the way. Like Finland and Sweden are actually thinking about applying to NATO right now.
Wow.
But they are saying like, but maybe you should go for neutrality. And what is important for audience in New Zealand to understand is that we were neutral in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea and started the war in Donbass. So now when Russia is saying like, as long as you are neutral, you are safe, I'm sorry, we all remember the history of 8 years ago, and we're not falling for that trap anymore.
Yeah. For people who don't know, there's just an image of the NATO countries. NATO countries in sort of the blue color, and up here at Finland and those areas, he's saying a neutral, and there's Ukraine just there.
Yeah. Sorry, that's for you to know that air raid alert has been lifted. That's
so the air raid alert that's been lifted. Or that's good news. So
yeah,
that's good news.
That means that it was here like for half an hour. Yeah, it started before we started. No.
To someone living on the other side of the world speaking to you, that certainly brings a new reality to the conversation we're having right now.
No.
I guess what I wanted to ask you, maybe it's an impossible question. I've just got two more quick questions. The first one is, what happens next? I mean, what happens next from your perspective? How does this finish? And what's the next step for the Ukraine-Russia war? Well, I say the Russian war with Ukraine. It's like Ukraine didn't have any part to play in this.
Yeah.
What's the next step in this?
Well, sorry, this is the air raid alert being lifted. Not on the, so we got, I'm sorry, just to explain to the audience, we got the apps on our phones, and they work a little bit faster than the sirens on the streets. But now there is a siren on the street saying that it is lifted. So that is how it is functioning. So I'm just hearing the sound. I'm not sure if you hear that as well.
Yeah, no, we did.
Okay. So what is the next? Well, first of all, I believe that the whole world was at first feeling relief that a Russian army has been kicked out of Kyiv region and northern region in general.
Yep.
We didn't feel this feeling of relief because as Ukrainian army was regaining control over those territories, we were also getting more and more pictures from Bucha. So I did, like it overwhelmed everything. But right now, we understand that the next major battles will be taking place on the east of Ukraine and a bit on the south. Russia is concentrating its forces in Donbass. We understand that Putin needs to show for some sort of victory for Russian people on the what they call the Victory Day, May 9th. So we believe that they will be fighting like as much as possible on Donbass, so that at least because at first you have to realize they were hoping to take over Kyiv in 3 days. That was their plan. They failed dramatically in it. They didn't realize how strong Ukrainian army is and what level of resistance they will face. But right now they need at least some sort of victory. So they're changing their narrative. I'm hearing Russian propaganda speaking. They are all now saying not that they should, change the regime in Kyiv, as they were saying. Right now they're saying it's all about protection of people of Donbass.
Right.
And that is why apparently they're killing them. That's making no sense because they're basically right now they're destroying Donbass town after town. But I think that's what they will go for. They will try to take control over the rest of Donbass because they were controlling as of January 2022 about 40% of Donbass. So they will try to go to take control over the rest part of the region and claim that to be their victory for the Victory Day, May 9th. I think that is what will be happening. And what about us? Well, we don't really have much of a choice. We have to fight. And I'm being asked often, like, where do you get the strength and how do you manage to resist? And I think sometimes the answer is as simple as we don't have a choice. Like, we truly don't. We are literally fighting for our lives, for our future, for the lives of our children, for our ability to live in this land. So we don't really have a choice except for fighting back. How long that will take and how successful the Ukrainian army will be, but 50% of that truly depends of resupply of weapons to the army of Ukraine.
Hey, last question, Ina. We have a female prime minister here in New Zealand, and I was wondering if you had an opportunity to speak directly to Jacinda Ardern, from one politician to another, from one female to another, from one mother to another, what would you actually be asking or telling her?
Well, first of all, I'm a great fan. I've been following her career, so she's great. I think the way she's 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 doing her job, being both mother, politician, and she also had a baby while she was in office, right? So she's
no, first term.
it's like I try managing having a rather grown up child and work as a parliamentary. That is tough on itself. So it's amazing how she's doing that, and I think she's also a very fresh voice to the whole world. Like New Zealand is not often on the political map of the world, but she managed to bring that on, and I think she was doing a great job, frankly speaking. But what I want her to say, woman to woman, in case she's listening, well, first of all, she's great. Second, is just please remember that this is about the crime against one child is a crime against all children of the world. And what Russians are doing right now is just incomprehensible. They are monsters for what they're doing, like raping women, killing children. And I believe not a single country should allow for that to be happening anywhere in the world. And we, as the whole, world, should resist that. So I'm just asking you to step in to an extent possible. I understand Ukraine is very distant from New Zealand, but I still believe that we are very similar as all human beings, well, except for Russians. Because we all want our children to be happy. We all want to spend times with our loved ones. And that is the same that we want here in Ukraine. Nothing different from what you want in New Zealand. And that is what we are fighting for. So we are just asking you to help us get to that goal sooner rather than later.
Sovsun, the deputy leader of the Holos Party in Ukraine. Stay safe. Thank you so much for giving us some time today. I very much appreciate you giving us a few minutes. Stay safe. We'll let you go so you can get back to your son. And I very much appreciate you giving us some time today.
Sure. Thank you so much. Have a good day.